There's something out in the woods, and it's getting closer to my home. Goodbye for now. I'm being stalked by this evil thing. It could have easily snatched me away or wrapped up my house, much like my neighbors, but it hasn't yet. For whatever reason, it's just been staring at me from the distant forest all night, the last 2 nights. No web building sounds, which is what I've determined was what I was hearing the first 3 nights. Just sitting there, watching my home, watching me inside, shuffling from one room to the next. The first night of being watched, I grabbed my Mossberg and sat in a chair facing the window, awaiting a charge from the arachnid. I thought for sure that would be my last night on Earth. I had ideations about how I'd go, being punctured by those unbelievable fangs over and over, chewed up in whatever sort of unimaginable mouth it used. I just hoped it would administer some sort of primitive venom if the thing had been given enough time to evolve such a trait since the world's creation. It probably didn't need venom, though, given its size. I know the girl screamed long enough to infer there was no such mercy offered to its prey. I imagined those blank and unblinking eyes that watched me all night, but up close. I imagined the smell of the giant thing, the weight of it crushing me. That was the first night. Sleep took me at some point, maybe for a few minutes or an hour, I couldn't tell. The eyes were gone, and the day was breaking. I couldn't believe I was still alive. The arachnid had retreated somewhere in that forest to sleep. At least that's what I had assumed. Anger filled me, and I felt rage I hadn't felt since I was younger and more energized. I decided I was solely responsible for the destruction of this primeval harvestman. I don't have much of anything left, anyway. I knew I wouldn't be able to live on after witnessing the girl being consumed in front of me. I have just enough life left in me for this final task. I spread out the hunting map I had taken from my neighbor's car, and I began to study it with great care. I looked for formations that this thing would enjoy crawling into and resting in. There were nearby valleys, ravines, and one cave. I figured ravines may be too wet for the arachnid. Valleys may ultimately be too exposed. But a cave could be the perfect home. It may be the very home it resided in for untold eons. The place where it felt the most comfortable. I marked the cave on the map and a few backup locations in case that fell through. I took a heavy dose of naproxen for my back pain, slung my rifle around my shoulder, and set off for the 2-mile hike to the mouth of the cave. It was hard to imagine myself realistically trekking to the cave, but with the help of drugs and adrenaline, it was possible. The hike was long and strenuous. I was constantly battling thorns and vines. I had to backtrack several times to make sure I wasn't getting lost. Occasionally, I'd look down and see patches of deep, narrow craters where the monstrosity had crawled. They were roughly on track to the cave's opening the whole way. I was very vigilant of any webbing, as I considered any one strand a delicate decision, a strategic tripwire placement which ran into the nest of the arachnid. I saw some here and there, none I had to step over, luckily. The deeper into the woods I got, I could see more and more webbing all around. On the ground and in the trees, the thing had created a massively complex network of web. one big hunting net. Successfully maneuvering the strands meant adding more time to the hike, but it was still early enough in the day, or at least that was the logic I was operating under. I had no way of knowing how deeply this thing slept, or if it slept at all and simply just sat in its cave waiting for darkness. I knew regarding its web and tripping one of the strands, the beast had absurdly good senses at finding the exact spot that had been tripped. Other than that, I didn't know if it could see or smell or hear all that well. I think it's safe to assume it's the unmatched apex of the animal kingdom, but everything is uncertain about this thing beyond its thirst for flesh. After what must have been hours stalking around the forest, I finally came upon the cave. The first tip that I'd arrived was not the hunting map's assistance, but the amount of webbing surrounding the canopy above me. Next were the animal corpses being held in storage. Up in the trees, I saw dozens and dozens of deer bodies that had been rolled up into a bundle of web. Saving them for later? My eyes were then able to follow a more central tangle of web, all leading towards a big dark opening in the earth. The mouth of the cave. As I approached, I had to seriously watch my footing. Web now was covering much of the forest floor, all leading into the cave's chasm, which was much larger than I expected. I thought of the potential lost souls who had previously journeyed into this nameless cave in search of adventure, only to be met with the spiny legs which would soon impale them. Who knows if anyone had been in there before, but it existed on the map, so it must have been surveyed at some point in history. They should have left it off the map. I walked as close as I could to the cave to peer in. I was so scared at this point. My pain medication had worn off, but I was in such a cloud of fright that I felt out of my body. I found an angle where I could look down into the chasm, and it was a horrific sight. So much webbing, like a fortress of silk. Even though there was a screen of webbing over the cave, I could tell it went down deep, very deep. I saw bones and random unidentifiable pieces of organic matter, table scraps. It didn't take long to confirm that this was, in fact, the place where the arachnid rested, and not just some hideous safe house. There was a wind coming from within the cave, powerful wind. It flexed the webbing screen which largely covered the cave's mouth. Breath. It was breathing, long and slow breaths. It sounded so large, the earth itself could have been inhaling and exhaling from this orifice in its crust. The rancid air wafted up and I breathed it in. It smelled of decaying rot, metal, and some unfamiliar gastric odor. The ancient thing was in there, awake or dormant, I was unsure. But it was in there, and so I had my confirmation of its whereabouts during the daytime. I now had to return home without alerting it. This was only a scouting trip to find where it lived. As I turned around to head back, I nearly gave myself away to the thing down below. In a mess of webs, dangling like a Christmas ornament, was the deformed body of one of my neighbors, the father. His head was just a crushed mess of torn skin and insides, but one of his arms was hanging outside of the web bundle, and it had recognizable tattoos on it. I think his body was now just from the chest and up, the rest long digested by the cave-dwelling thing. Poor man. I silently cried as I hobbled all the way back home, successfully avoiding capture again. While the last remnants of light shone through the forest, I took an opportunity to sleep. I made sure to wake up before nightfall. I prepared for nighttime by sitting in my chair right by the window and resting my rifle in my lap. I was unsure if the thing determined its attacks based on lapsed attention or if sitting and staring right back would provoke it, but I decided I didn't want to take my eyes off it no matter what. Sure enough, a few hours into the night, it came back. I heard it crawling this way, although I could tell it was trying to keep its volume to a minimum. I couldn't make the arachnid out directly, but once again I saw its eyes reflecting in the pitch black, staring at me. I was shaking the whole night. I'll admit I'm not the bravest soul, but I never flinched. Never moved from that chair the whole night. We just sat all night staring at one another. I never detected a single movement from the giant thing, not any sort of blinking from those reflective eyes. It was the longest night of my life. When dawn began to bring color to the sky, the arachnid slowly backed up, eventually turning around and crawling quickly away from me. Was it scared of me? Did it not understand our size differences? Who could know for certain? I was mainly grateful for another night. Now it is the present, and I'm writing this as I sit out on the deck. I love this deck. I love this house. I even love this god-forsaken forest. It's my home, and I'm heartbroken and terrified to be leaving it. But some of life's problems are just bigger than an individual. Today, after I write this, I will hike back out to the thing's cave, and I will introduce it to something it may be too old to know of: fire. I have a few canisters of gasoline around here for my long-retired tractors and mowers. I'm going to bring as much as I can haul to the mouth of the cave and douse the ancient pest in it. Then I will light a match and set it ablaze. I'm sure the thing will protest, and that's when I'll unload as much ammo as I can into its wretched body. I'm bringing 2 rifles to save on reload time. I do not know if this attempt at its life will be successful. I do not know if I will survive. I don't expect to. I'm just waiting for the remainder of my pain medication to kick in, and then I will set out. I'm sorry to my neighbors. I'm not sure if there was anything I could have realistically done, but I'm still sorry all the same. I should have been more involved with the only people I had left in my little nook. I'm especially sorry to the girl, whose name I don't even know, and how much she suffered because of an absent-minded decision I made in the heat of the moment. I should have been more careful. To those who have read these accounts, I thank you for your time and your advice. I'm sorry I will not be calling the police or running away. There's just no more room for a lost old man in this world. This hauler was my home, and should I die today, I'd like to think it was because I sacrificed myself to defend this place I've called home for years now. Do not try to seek this place out. I've attempted to keep my location as ambiguous as I possibly could. You may have your suspicions, but I cannot emphasize enough that this place has nothing for you. You do not want to come face to face with this arachnid. Should it survive my ambush, or God forbid it has young nested somewhere, you will want to be as far from this devil's lair as possible. There are good natural barriers keeping this thing isolated from the rest of the world. It might not be too different from me. It might also consider this place the only home it'll ever know. Do not persuade it to travel elsewhere. I am scared, but I am ready. I've made my peace. I'm ready to see my wife, my parents, and my old friends again. In an ironic sort of way, this arachnid might be just the closure I need to punctuate my otherwise slow and rotting life. I am scared, but I am ready. Thanks for keeping me company. My name is Jeb.